I'm so excited about today's guest, Chris Voss, CEO of the Black Swan Group and author of the best-selling book, Never Split the Difference, widely regarded as one of the top negotiation books of all time. Chris is a former FBI lead international kidnapping negotiator with over 24 years of experience and more than 150 cases under his belt. Today, he uses those high-stakes strategies to help businesses solve communication problems and close better deals. He's taught at Harvard and Georgetown universities and have been featured in Time, CNN, Business Insider, Success Magazine, and Masterclass. Let's dive into this powerful conversation with one of the most influential negotiation experts, teaching you how to up your game on sales and negotiation to win better deals in business. Welcome, Chris. I'm so grateful that we can finally make this work. You're right now in California, and I'm in Italy, in Sardinia, so we have huge time differences between us today.
Anna, you said a mouthful.
Well, your resume is quite impressive, so I am really looking forward to sharing your wealth of knowledge and just really getting some insights here on how people can use this type of negotiating skills to grow their brand and to really become more successful at creating more winning deals for themselves in business.
Excellent. And I'm going to tell you, of all the places you said I've been featured, I need to share with you the place I'm featured that I'm most proud of.
Yes?
My mother's coffee table. You can't come into my mom's house and she's going to walk you in and sit you down, and my book is going to be right there by Clinton.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, there's no greater honor than when your family, especially your mom, can honor you in that way and show off to all of her friends what her son has accomplished.
Yes, yeah. My mom is who I'm happiest to make proud of me. My mom, my dad's passed, but I'm both very proud that I've tried to live up to the standards of hard work that they believed in.
You have more than lived up to the standard. You have created the standard.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Very cool. So I want to ask you, Chris, because lead kidnap negotiator. This isn't really the kind of career one grows up saying, I'm going to be the lead kidnap negotiator for the FBI. So, how did you even get into the FBI, much less the kidnapping negotiation section of it?
Yeah, well, like all the other cool stuff in life, you just kind of follow your journey, follow stuff that you enjoy doing, and who knows where you end up. I mean, I wanted to get into law enforcement.
Yes.
I was a police officer in Kansas City, Missouri.
Okay.
My father encouraged me to get interested in federal law enforcement.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about the feds. He had a friend that was a Secret Service agent. I didn't know Secret Service from FBI, from DEA, from CIA, from ABC. I didn't know what any of those things were. But to my good fortune, the FBI happened to be hiring.
Mm-hmm.
They had a big hiring push on at the time that I was interested, and I got on with the FBI. It was cool.
Amazing.
They sent me to New York. I didn't want to go to New York. I'm a small town boy from Iowa. What's a guy from Iowa going to do in a big city? But I loved it. I loved it. And I found people, I've always found people that worked hard, but also had a great time, which kind of means you learn a lot. If you have fun at work, actually, you learn a lot more.
It's true.
And yeah. So, next thing I know, I'm sitting in front of my computer talking to you.
So tell me, so you weren't prepared for this. You obviously, it's an opportunity that came, you grabbed it. How did you become such an expert at negotiation, an area that I think even a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with? Like, how do they actually get into the sales conversation and get a client to buy, and all of these things? Like, how did you become great at this? Was it a natural gift, or how did you develop the skill?
I don't think there's such thing as natural gifts. I think if we get an interest in it and if we have some fun at it, we start to put in our hours.
Yes.
It does. You don't have to put in very many hours to start to pull ahead of everybody else. Interestingly enough,
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
a difference between getting enough better at everybody else begin to immediately have an impact on what you're doing. Most people are just really average at negotiation. So even though myself and my team, we've got our hours in, what we really are great negotiation coaches.
Yes.
We can help people. You don't have to go that far to get better than everybody else. And I'm
Yeah.
not talking about a type of negotiation where you smash the other side,
Yeah.
where you leave the other side in ruins or in shambles. We don't believe in that. That's bad long term. I'm talking
Yes.
about making great deals that you're
Mhm.
proud of and that actually enhance your reputation. And that's
Absolutely.
not smashing people.
Absolutely. Something happened just a few weeks ago. I have this 6-year-old niece, and she's an excellent negotiator, I think, because we were out at dinner, and I actually wanted to sit on a particular chair at the table. And she ran and grabbed the chair before I could get to it. And I said, Sarah, I'd really like to sit there. And she said, Auntie, this chair, which is available, is the better chair. Look at the view that you're going to have. And look, you're going to be, over there where you're going to be much closer. And it's such a better space. I mean, this was a 6-year-old. And I'm like sitting, you're really good.
She's pitching value, huh? Good for her.
She's pitching value. I mean, she was just amazing. And so is that what negotiation, is that what you speak about when you say that it's not about, crushing the other side or you just winning, but really about showing the value?
Well, and here's the interesting, this is a game-changing concept
Mm-hmm.
because why you won't do things is much more important than why you will.
Mm,
When you're pitching value, it's about why you will.
yeah.
We focus on the opposite. We focus on clearing up the problems first,
Mm,
clearing up the negatives. And that actually accelerates it does two things. It accelerates the deal-making process.
yeah.
For example, myself or one of my coaches, somebody might come to us in the middle of a negotiation they've been working on for months, literally.
Yes.
We'll typically have it resolved in 10 days or less.
Wow.
So that's the first thing. Focusing on the negatives tends to accelerate the process.
Yeah.
Very counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing it does is even more important on the back end. The negatives are what kill your profit.
Yes.
Implementation, if you will, the implementation of the deal is really the critical issue.
Mm,
And it's where your money is made or lost. You don't make or lose money on coming to an agreement. You make and lose money based on how smooth implementation is.
right.
So if we focused on the problems from the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
not only have we accelerated the deal-making process,
Yeah.
we've actually also accelerated the implementation process
Mm-hmm.
so that you don't lose money, you make money on implementation. So there's kind of a double benefit.
Mm.
And you get that by de-emphasizing value and going after problems first.
So what would that look like, say, in a sales situation? What do you mean go after the problems first? So say I have a prospective client and I'm trying to make a deal. What would that look like in terms of going after problems first?
Well, all right. So I could do one of two things. I could say,
Mm-hmm.
all right, so what about this works for you? What makes it work for you? What's good about this deal?
Mm-hmm.
Now you're going to be reluctant to reveal that to me because single thing that you say, you're going to feel like you're giving up leverage to me and you're going to
Yeah.
feel like you're making a partial commitment. And if
Mm.
you're a good person, you're going to be worried that you're indicating that you're agreeing even before you are. And so you're going to be
Mm.
very reluctant and you're going to be extremely hesitant to share that. It's going to take me quite a while to earn your trust to get you to share that. That's why
Right.
there's no shortage of times where people say, I pursued him for months. I mean, I found out what gym they worked out in and I waited for him in the locker room. It's all about showing persistence and trustworthiness over time because
Mm.
people are really worried about telling us what works. But if
Mm.
instead I say, look, what are the barriers to this deal? What's getting in your way? Why wouldn't you do this? What
Mm.
has to be solved before you can agree? Now, you're going to be really open with me about that because in no way, shape, or form are you making a commitment to me by telling me about the problems. So you're going to be much freer with that. You're not going to feel like you're misleading me. You're not going to feel like you're leading me on. There's
Yes,
no there's no feeling, no aura of false agreement there.
I
And if you
understand.
begin to tell me about the problems, by implication there, you're explaining the value proposition to me
Mm-hmm.
by what you're clearing away.
Yes.
And you're also telling me about where the implementation problems are going to be. And you're going to do it freely because there's no feeling of commitment by explaining to me why you won't do something.
So what I'm getting here is that when you go into the positive aspects of it, it's almost as if the brain is telling this person that they're committing to something that they might not be ready to commit to. But when you go into the negative aspect of why they wouldn't do it, it gives them the freedom to express themselves more.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives them the freedom to express themselves more. And also there's a problem with, there's something out there called the yes momentum or momentum selling,
Hmm.
where the seller is trying really hard to trap you, to get you
Mm.
to say yes, to get you to make tiny little micro agreements that
Yes.
ultimately put you in a position where you can't escape.
Mm.
And that's been done to us so many times
Yeah.
that people are extremely leery of it. I mean, we've all sort of been battered with this yes momentum or this momentum selling nonsense. So
Yes.
that because we've been tricked before by the swampland salesman, by the coupon book salesman, by somebody who's selling us something that looks too good to be true, we're
Yes.
extremely leery of this approach.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that really does shift the perspective of how it works. And that's a game changer.
You know what? It is a game changer. And that's why people that negotiate like this, they
Hmm.
close deals faster than anybody else does.
Amazing, amazing insight. And so your company is called Black Swan.
Well,
And
the Black Swan,
the
we got to
Black
have
Swan.
in there.
It's not just Black Swan, it's
It's
the Black
the
Swan,
Black Swan.
right? And
Yeah.
so this isn't just an empty brand name. I know there's a lot of meaning behind it. And, Chris talks about this in his book, Never Split the Difference. So if you don't have it yet, get it on Amazon. Um, but tell us about Black Swan and how you came up with the name and what this concept is all about.
Well, we were I was originally inspired first when I heard about the idea of the Black Swan
Hmm.
from Nicholas Taleb's book in 2007 called The Black Swan. And it was about the impact of the highly improbable.
Mm.
Now, Taleb got this idea from the 16th century when the whole world thought that there were only white swans. The whole world, forgive me, it was Western Europe
Yeah.
only thought that there were white swans. And they talked about something that would never happen, something that was impossible, a black swan.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, they discovered black swans in Australia. And they found that black swans really do exist. But since they hadn't seen them before, it's this new idea of stuff that we've overlooked that's going to
Hmm.
change everything. That, again, to use the phrase game changing, to be a game changing event. And they're
Yes.
frequently, these are tiny little things, the impact of the highly improbable. So we traced the idea back from the book and explored sort of the origin of the idea. And we thought that's perfect for us on two levels.
Yeah.
We'll make tiny little changes in the way that we negotiate, and it'll have huge impacts on the outcome. Plus, we'll teach people to look for the subtle little things that will have a
Mm.
huge impact on the outcome.
Amazing. Amazing. So it's always looking for that sort of the black swan, which is almost like a unicorn, but it does exist in this
Right,
case.
yeah. Exactly. That's exactly it. Yes.
Awesome. And so I just wanted to skip ahead into, your days as a high stake kidnapping negotiator. And we know that in those situations, it's like time pressure. You have high stakes, there's human lives at stake. What are some of the core skills that you had to develop to be able to deal with the overwhelm of pressure to be able to make something happen in a certain amount of time, just knowing what's at stake?
Yeah, well, let's talk about time pressure to start with.
Yeah.
I mean, this is more time considerations or time context.
Yeah.
And being aware of time context is helpful because the other side has an expectation of time,
Yeah.
the same way that we do. And so getting a feel for what the other side's expectation of time is going to help you be more mentally, emotionally intelligent, emotionally aware of how they view the situation. There's a friend of mine that had a great phrase about leverage, which I believe is completely in the eye of the beholder, just like beauty is.
Yes.
But she said leverage, it doesn't matter what leverage they have on you. What matters is what they think of the leverage you have on them.
That's a game changer.
Which begins to make you wonder what leverage really is, right? What is leverage?
Yeah.
And when we really began to make a difference in kidnapping negotiations was first being aware of what it is to the other side. To the other side, it's a commodity. It's commodities exchange.
Yeah.
It's a business deal. We might not like it, but you have to understand what's going on with the other side. They're just businessmen.
Yes.
And then, crazily enough, the strongest weapon we had to influence the outcome was empathy. And we found it to be ridiculously effective on crusaders, criminals, and crazies. I mean, it didn't matter if they were a mercenary businessman, a sociopath, a ridiculous believer in whatever their doctrine was.
Yeah.
We could adapt empathy, which is why we call it tactical empathy now. Adapting it into a situation where nobody thought it would make any difference gave us one of the biggest stealth weapons we ever had.
Amazing. Who would think that empathy would be such a powerful tool in the negotiation process?
You don't normally think of empathy as a tactical weapon, if you will. The weaponization of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
But crazily enough, it's kind of one of the most powerful tools of influence out there. We believe very strongly that it's actually the most powerful tool of influence.
Is it
and if
because
leverage is influence, then it's the most powerful tool for leverage.
So is it because does empathy work because the other side is thinking that they're now in a power position because you're expressing that vulnerability?
One of the things is exactly how they perceive it. I mean, another way that we would say that is the secret to gaining the upper hand in a negotiation is giving the other side the illusion of control. So we want them to feel like they're in a power position because people are enormously influenceable, if that's a word. I'm sure I mispronounced it. But they're much more open to influence when they feel safe and secure or in a power position.
Yeah. And so how can we now use this empathy tactic in business?
Well, and that's exactly the question. We learned that to calm the other side down, we needed to diffuse their negative emotions. We learned that they're more driven by what they're afraid they were going to lose and what they thought that they were going to gain. I mean, we were programmed in hostage negotiation to first look for the other side's loss or their view of the potential loss. And to use our emotional intelligence tools to take what we thought it might be and then just start bouncing it off of them until we found out for sure what they were worried about losing. Everybody's worried about losing something. And I first learned this stuff in the 1990s, actually.
Yeah.
Then along in about 2002, Daniel Kahneman, with help from Amos Tversky, who by then unfortunately had died.
Yeah.
Kahneman wins a Nobel Prize in behavioral economics for everybody's behavior, saying that it's principally driven by what people are afraid of losing. And I went, holy cow, we've been doing that in hostage negotiation for 30 years. I didn't know it applied to everything.
It's amazing how we can box in those concepts and they're such universal concepts.
Exactly.
Amazing. This is really shifting, how even I see the whole sales process and just really understanding to come at it from a place of what are people fearing? How can you really speak to that empathetically so that they can free themselves from it and feel more confident in the process?
Yeah, feel more confident in the process and then by implication, but it always follows, more confident in you.
For sure, because you're sort of projecting that to them, so it's opening them up.
Right. It's extremely subtle, but it's extremely powerful.
Amazing, amazing. And so in your book, you share more on this, but for our viewers, how can we turn more no's into yeses? Because I know a lot of people want to know that. Like, how can we turn more no's into yeses in the sales process when using negotiation techniques?
Well, let's say we're looking for something else other than yes. I
Okay.
mean, agreement is not necessarily a yes. I mean, complete agreement with what someone has just said.
Yeah.
If I describe a situation to you and you're completely in agreement, I mean, deep down in your bones, you don't
Yeah.
say yes, you say, that's right.
That's correct.
That's what I want. That's what I need. That's dead on. That's right. When you
Yeah.
hear something that you believe to be completely right, you
Mm-hmm.
say that's right. So we shift people out of trying to get yes. We don't even bother with the word.
Hmm.
We look for that's right. We look for people laying out to us what we can agree to.
Yeah.
But we're really good at failing to agree with what doesn't work. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you lay something out to me that's going to be a problem, I'm, instead of just saying no, that's not going to work,
Yeah.
actually the best way for me to empathically say that's not going to work and I need you to think of a better idea, I'm just going to say, how am I supposed to do that?
Yeah.
And say it just like that. Because
Amazing.
you'll want to help me. You'll want to come to my side and
Yes.
fix it for me when I say it like that.
That's amazing. And so one of the things that you speak about that I think lends itself to that, and Chris goes in a lot more detail with this in his book, but one of the things you talk about is that false yes. And every business person dreads that moment where a prospective client says yes on a deal, and 2 days later you hear nothing.
And that's why it's one of the reasons why we don't bother with the word. I mean,
Yeah.
in reality, there are three kinds of yeses. There's commitment, there's confirmation, and there's counterfeit.
Counterfeit yes. That's the one.
Counterfeit, yes. So many people try to trap us into commitment yes
Mm-hmm.
with a series of confirmation yeses
Yeah.
that we get real good at the counterfeit yes. And that's why so many entrepreneurs, so many business people get the counterfeit yes. I will tell you that I would rather have somebody say maybe than yes, because
Mm.
when they say maybe, I know if I have any brains at all
Yeah.
that there's a problem. I'm never going to be misled by thinking that they're all in if they say maybe.
Yes.
The counterfeit yes is so pervasive, and people say it so often that we're completely surprised, blindsided, bushwhacked
Yes.
by the implications of a counterfeit yes. So we get away from the word entirely because so many people are so used to giving the counterfeit yes.
Yeah. And so how do you even detect when it's a counterfeit yes? How do you avoid it or detect it?
Well, there's two things that we do on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Any question where I might be tempted to ask to see if you agree,
Yeah.
would say yes to, I just switch it to what we refer to as a no-oriented question. So I won't say, do you agree? I'll say, do you disagree?
Mm.
Instead of saying, does this look like something that would work for you? I will say, is it ridiculous to think that this would work for you?
That's interesting.
We flip, anytime we focus down on what most people would need a yes to, we just change the first part of the question to change it to no oriented, because what you're going to do when you say no, I'll
Yeah.
say, do you disagree? You'll say, no, I don't disagree, but here are the following problems.
Yeah.
Perfect. You just gave me all the problems. You just outlined by implication what an agreement by implication what an agreement would look like. So we
Sure.
don't even bother with yes at all. When it's really important to me, I'll
Mm-hmm.
say, do you disagree? Are you against? Is it against? Is it impossible?
Yes.
I had a negotiation recently. We sold some tickets to one of our negotiation event
Mm-hmm.
to Robert Herjavec's company. I was in contact with Robert Herjavec from Shark Tank. Everybody knows
Yes.
Robert Herjavec from
Yeah.
Shark Tank. As a side note, wonderfully generous guy. I mean,
Mm.
I sat down and I had two separate 90-minute lunches with him.
Wow.
And to get 90 minutes with a billionaire is not an easy thing to do.
Yes.
But this guy's extremely curious and he's extremely smart and he wanted to hear what I had to say. So now we're talking about selling some tickets to him for a negotiation event we're putting on in New York. And they're waffling not on whether or not they want the tickets, but how many. Now the event's about to sell out. And I mean, literally it's moments from selling out and they haven't committed to buy. And I know that they want somewhere between 3 and 7. And of course I could hope for 7, but hope is not a strategy.
Yes.
So I sent him an email and I say, are you against making a commitment for 3 tickets now? Because I didn't have an hour. I needed a commitment now. So instead of can you make a commitment now, I said, are you against making a commitment now? I also followed it up with, because the tickets were going to sell before the next business day started, I said, are you against paying for the tickets before the start of business tomorrow in New York? We're in California. New York starts 3 hours earlier. We don't have time to waste.
Yeah.
So 2 critical commitments. I'm seeking a commitment both on the word no. I get an email back less than 20 minutes later. No, we're not against. We commit to 3 tickets now. My assistant will get back to you within the hour and we'll pay for the tickets.
Amazing.
It works.
Amazing.
We don't go for yes, we go for no.
This is a serious game changer, and I call these pearls of wisdom. So ladies, if you're listening, you want to write that down because it really changes the dynamic. And so people have a natural tendency, if they feel like they're disagreeing with you, they want to agree. So
well, here's what I would say. People want to collaborate. People are hardwired to collaborate. Our co-author, my co-author, you know, the book never split the difference. It's attributed to myself and Tal Roz, a brilliant writer. Yeah. Really, it's me, my son, and Tal Roz. My son, Brandon, was very involved in the book. But anyway, through the process, Tal said, human beings are wired to collaborate because the only cavemen that survived are the ones that collaborated with each other.
Yes.
You know, the caveman, the whatever version of man, Cro-Magnon man that didn't collaborate, those guys died alone in caves all by themselves because they didn't collaborate. So we're kind of hardwired in those, only those of us that survived in our DNA and our genes to collaborate. And I think that's what people are hardwired to do, to collaborate.
Yeah. No, that's really an interesting way of seeing it and turning things around to get the answer that you want, just working from a different angle.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Amazing. And so I want to ask you, you know, what are the top 5 traits that a person must develop to become a powerful negotiator?
You just need a shade of patience to start with. You don't need a lot. Patience is not something I need you to be. I mean, I was coaching a friend of mine recently, and this is a coaching that I gave even in kidnapping negotiations. I said, we're going to use patience as a weapon. I mean, most people have no patience. Yeah. So you develop a shade of it, you're immediately more competitive than the other side. Yeah. So now that you got a shade of patience, now you have to be willing to let the other side go first. Now that's counter to the vast majority of academic instruction.
Yes.
But interestingly enough, if you look at all the great practitioners of negotiation, and I would refer to the great practitioners of people like Warren Buffett and Oprah Winfrey. Yes. You know, they don't preach haste. Yeah. I mean, you're gonna see that they preach. They love it when the other side talks first. They want to find out what you're thinking. They want to find out where you're coming from. They just look at that as information. And they're not scared to listen because, number one, they got a pretty good idea of what they want. Yes. But they also live by the rule, never be so sure of what you want that you wouldn't take something better.
I love it.
How do I get something better? I get you talking and I get you to suggest it.
Yeah. Which happens all the time. If you're patient, I've seen it happen all the time, even in my own business where I had one price in mind and then the client ended up offering more than I thought.
You said, oh my God, you're so smart. And they felt wonderful. Yeah. Because you know what? Then people feel like they won.
Yes.
And when they feel like they won, then they have a tendency to stick to the agreement. which then
Yeah.
is one of the most critical issues. If they felt like they lost, they're not going to stick to the agreement. They got to feel like they won.
It's true. It's so true. And so it's really about listening more, as you said, that shade of patience, gathering more information.
Right. Gather some information. And now at some point in time, that's why we call it tactical empathy. We get a good idea what we're looking for.
Yes.
If I'm going to listen and I know the most important stuff for me to look for first
Yeah.
is why you won't do the deal. Number one, now I begin to see it. Number two, then I got to deal with it like a hostage negotiator would. And the 2 millimeter shift, to borrow a phrase from Tony Robbins,
Yeah.
the 2 millimeter shift is, instead of saying, hey, I don't want you to feel, or I don't want you to think, or I don't want you to be worried,
Yeah.
it's for me to say, I'm sure you feel this way. I'm sure you think, probably seems like. I start calling out the elephant in the room, if you will, and simply by observing that the
Yes.
elephant is there is actually the fastest way to get rid of it. You say, no, the elephant ain't in the room. And the other people
Yeah.
say, oh, yes, it is. Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah.
But if you said, hey, look, there's an elephant in a room, and it's probably kind of overwhelming, people will say,
Yeah.
like, well, the elephant's here, but no, it's not that bad. Those are two completely different responses to the same strategy of eliminating the elephant in the room, but denial makes it bigger, and observation makes it seem not quite so much of a problem.
Amazing. And so we have three things here. So it's about that touch of patience, listening more because you might just get more than you originally thought you could, and really about acknowledging the elephant in the room.
Now you're doing a good job paying attention, keeping track, and you're going to make me go for 5 too. I can tell right now.
Absolutely.
There's no splitting the difference on this one. You're not going to settle for 3. You want 5. You're going to get 5 out of it.
So what are the other two that you would suggest that a person develop?
All right. So then get good at what or how questions.
Okay.
Now, if we get to the point where I've gone through this entire process and you're still not throwing out ideas that work for me, I'm going to innocently say, genuinely say, how do we fix this? How do you want to proceed?
Yeah.
What comes next in order to make this a good deal? How or what questions that are designed to put you in problem solving mode? And I don't have to agree to whatever you say.
Yeah.
I just got to keep asking you how and what questions until you outline a great deal for me. If one can be outlined, but you got to suggest it. It's got to come from you, because again, implementation is critical. And if you own the idea because you came up with it, then it's going to happen, at least on your end, if you can help it. So what and how questions are good if you get further down into the interaction.
I love this. So I think you just gave us two more, because it's the what and how questions, and then it's getting them to suggest and outline the deal so that they take ownership of it.
Well, if you will, let's call those one, because I got one more.
Okay, great.
No matter what, and we call this the Oprah rule.
Oprah
just
rule.
because, Oprah, I'm convinced it's one of the keys to her ridiculous success. No matter what interaction you have with Oprah Winfrey or any of her people, they are bound and determined that at the end, you're going to feel like you were treated wonderfully. So it's the last impression. If no matter what happens on our interaction, no matter what, instead of me saving my last impression for my last cheap shot or the last word or the last bit of convincing or the last bit of telling you why you're wrong or right, no matter what, I'm going to say something to you at the end that lets you know that I have regard for you and that I felt good about the interaction and I'm hopeful for your success for the future. The last impression is the lasting impression, and you can have complete control of the last impression if you're determined to make it positive. And that's what Oprah and her staff have always done. And let's take a look at where Oprah started and where she is now. And I would suggest to you that that's a great way to be successful.
Amazing. So it's all about that customer service piece at the end, that making people feel special, making them feel that you really care about them, that you really acknowledge them type of way.
Or yeah, some sort of gratitude or acknowledgement. I mean, you know, it's an effective example. It happens to us all the time. What
Sure.
about the waiter or waitress in a restaurant that doesn't pay any attention to us? You know, they're there half as often as we want them to. They never ask us if we want a dessert. They didn't give us
Yeah.
refills on our drinks. You know, but when it's all said and done, they came up and they say, "Thank you so much for coming in today. It was
Yeah.
such a pleasure having you here." Do waiters and waitresses who've given bad service do that because they've trained that way? Well, the training they got is they know that's how to rescue their tip. The last impression is the last impression. And they know if they come up to you and are just effusive with gratitude that you're even on the planet, let alone in that restaurant, they're probably still going to get a tip.
It's true, because it sort of surprises you. It takes you off guard, and suddenly you're like, they're not so bad after all.
Right, and that's the impression you're left with. I mean, there's just unrelenting positive regard. I mean, I was in a restaurant, a high-end restaurant in Atlanta just yesterday, and you know, for a high-end restaurant, I was kind of surprised at the lack of service. But when we got ready to get out of there, the waiter came up to us. "Oh, thank you so much. It was so wonderful to have," and I could see everybody's hearts softening and, you know, deciding to give them a little bit more of a tip as they were splitting up the bill. And the last impression is the lasting impression. It works on us all the time.
Absolutely. No, that's a great tip. Just really leaving the other person feeling totally filled up, totally feeling like, wow, you've just given them so much, and they're not feeling like they're owing you something in a way.
Exactly. Great expressions of gratitude.
Amazing. So great expressions of gratitude is that final one. So it's about, if I can do a quick recap here, it's about patience. So having that shade of patience, listening more, really about creating that situation where the person is outlining the deal themselves, asking how, what questions to make sure that you cancel out any opportunity for that counterfeit yes situation. And then really creating that shade of gratitude that really gets people feeling like they mean something to you.
Well, you passed the test. You got all the answers right. You get A+ on that paper.
Thank you. I'm glad. So now I just need to go and implement them all.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what I want to ask you is, what would you say was your biggest challenge that you've ever faced in a negotiation deal, and how did you overcome it? Like a gridlock situation where it felt like there was no way around this. How did you sort of break the ice and take control?
Well, first of all, you're not going to make every deal.
Yeah.
And we didn't. We didn't make every deal. But one of my favorites, and we talk about it in the book, was we were at a complete impasse, complete gridlock, no movement whatsoever, with a kidnapping of an American in the Philippines. The American's name was Jeffrey Schilling, and the terrorist group that had him was a group called the Abu Sayyaf. And we were at a standstill. They were demanding $10 million, but they said it wasn't ransom, it was war damages for 500 years of oppression. And we couldn't get them off the $10 million ransom demand. And we were dead stuck in an impasse.
Wow.
And had been stuck there for a while. So I coached my guy, because what I really was an international negotiation coach. I coached all over the world because I just needed to find somebody coachable there.
Yes.
I understand human nature, negotiation. They understand their culture. We take my human nature and we put it in their culture, and it works really fast.
Yeah.
So I said, look, all we're going to do with this guy, and understand that the bad guy on the other end of the line was a sociopathic murder and rape and terrorist. He was straight out of the movies, as bad as they get. Complete and utter sociopath, which sort of has the underlying subtext, does empathy work on a sociopath?
Yeah.
So we're going to get on this guy, on the phone with this guy, and we're going to lay a heavy-duty dose of empathy on him. And it's the expression of the articulation of the other side's point of view, including the bad stuff about you. And most importantly, the bad stuff about you. You don't try to dodge it. You don't try to minimize it in any way, shape, or form. You actually overstate it. So
Wow.
my guy gets on the phone after a lot of practice, and we overstated their case. We said, you're not looking for ransom for the American. You're looking for war damages. And you're looking for war damages for 500 years of oppression, from the Spanish to the Japanese to the Americans, to the atrocities committed under blackjack Persian by the Americans, from the violation of fishing rights, from the economic harm and war damages of over 500 years of oppression. And on top of everything else, you guys aren't Filipinos, you're Moros. You're in a separate, independent homeland in the south of the Philippines. So you're not even Filipinos. You're currently being oppressed by a puppet government in Manila that's held up by the most recent colonial power, the Americans. And it's unjust and it's wrong. And my guy just stated everything. Again, heavy duty dose of empathy on a sociopath.
Wow.
And he finished laying everything out that the sociopath had been using as his nonsensical reason for the kidnapping up to that point.
Yes.
And there was a long silence on the phone. And that killer on the other end of the line said, "That's right."
Wow.
And then there was a long silence. And my guy says, let's talk again in a couple of days. And the sociopath says, okay.
Wow.
And we went from $10 million to zero in that conversation. The $10 million ransom demand was never mentioned again. It went away. And a couple of months later, our hostage simply walked away from the terrorists. He just walked away.
Wow. So empathy is seriously a powerful tool. Really, it shows you that, okay, in some way that this person is actually, they don't really want to be doing this, but it's just what they know to do in the moment.
You know what? That's exactly right. They don't have a better coping mechanism. And if you're human, and let's say human in the dictionary definition of the word, not as in human as in possession of capacity.
Sure.
But if you're physically human, you are vulnerable to empathy. That's just the way we're wired. It doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter. Terrorist, crusader, criminal, crazy. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You have emotional wiring and you're vulnerable to empathy.
So this is a weapon that is not just only available in a high-stake kidnapping. It is a serious weapon that can be used in boardrooms, in meetings, sales situations, whatever the context. It is a life skill, empathy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Totally. No, amazing. And so, Chris, I know that we're going a little bit over time, but I know that you, in your book, Never Split the Difference, which is a highly respected authority book on the art of negotiating. There are several pearls of wisdom in there. And again, I want to encourage you to get this book because it is amazing. I mean, some of the concepts that Chris goes into, we just simply don't have the time to go through it here. And, what you have to know is that his company, Black Swan, of course, he deals with really high-level negotiations, works with some of the top Fortune 500 companies across America and across the globe. And so this is your coaching session with Chris, but you're going to get even more in the book. And one of the things that I wanted to point out is, I do a lot of work in terms of archetypes in brand building. And you speak about archetypes in your book in terms of your negotiator archetype, the negotiator style. How did you link negotiating styles to archetypes?
Well, I'm guessing what you're referring to is the three conflict modes.
Yes.
Which we believe, it basically, from the caveman days, there are three types of cavemen that survive.
Yeah.
When faced with a threat, it's fight, flight, make friends. Everybody knows about the fight or flight response.
Yes.
And, but there's also make friends. It was a caveman's response to how to survive when faced with some sort of a threat. And those are the cavemen that survive.
Yeah.
We believe, and we have a fair amount of data to back it up, that the world, regardless of gender or ethnicity, splits very evenly into these three types.
Yeah.
If we see a threat, we want to fight it, we want to run from it, we want to make friends with it. It doesn't matter what your gender is, men or women. It doesn't matter what your ethnicity is.
Yeah.
Asian, Western European, African. We've taught negotiations, and we've actually surveyed people literally from all cultures on a planet that are kind of consistent with this. One of the important things about this is, if we're anywhere near right, then whatever your personal type is, 2 out of 3 people you encounter are not going to be your type. Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you is, then the golden rule might be wrong, because you can't treat someone the way you want to be treated if there's a structural, functional difference in the way that they think.
Yes.
And what that really boils down to is most of our impasses in negotiations are usually as a result of a type mismatch. So then we took it a step further. We said, because we have 9 negotiation skills.
Yeah.
So we polled all 3 types and said, all right, so which skills do you like to have people use with you to make great deals? And which skills make you nervous? Important point there is 2 out of 3 types don't like to be asked questions. And almost all business people are taught to gather information by asking questions.
Yes. Wow.
So asking questions might not be the best way to gather information. The other thing we found out is we have a negotiation skill called labels, which is you can be deceived by their simplicity. Mm-hmm. It's a very simple design. It's an incredibly complex reaction. But all 3 types list labels as either their number 1 or number 2 way to be communicated with in order to make a great deal.
But how do you know what type you're dealing with? I mean, obviously you're going into the situation and you have to assess very quickly to be able to get a favorable outcome. So how do you make those assessments?
Well, the first thing to do is to start your assessment process by using labels. Because you know, no matter what type, and a label is like saying something like, look, it seems like you've given us a lot of thought, in order to get somebody to tell you what they're thinking. Instead of saying, what are you thinking?
Yes.
You say, seems like you're giving this a lot of thought. All 3 types are most likely to give you a straight download of thinking based on that label. Mm-hmm. Now, once we get started into it, the analytical side, the person who seems very cautious, nobody seems cautious who isn't.
Yeah.
The assertive, the person who seems aggressive.
Yeah.
Only assertives seem aggressive. Now, here's where the deception comes into play. The accommodator is a pleasant person to deal with. The person who's really relationship focused, who above all else is pleasant and trying to protect the relationship. Both of the assertives and the accommodators, I'm the assertives and the analysts, the blunt people or the quiet people, see how many more deals the accommodators are able to create, that they both typically learn to become accommodators.
Wow. So
you get deceived by someone who seems pleasant and relationship focused. And on my team, Maya Stevenson is our director of marketing.
Yeah.
She is the most pleasant and fun person that you would ever interact with. She's got a delightful voice. She laughs all the time. She always makes you feel good when you interact with her. Maya is a complete analyst. She thinks 10 times more things than I ever could have thought of in the first place. An analytical person analyzes every different aspect of everything that's going on.
Yes.
And she's extremely analytical, but she's so smart. She's come to learn about how effective it is to be a pleasant person. And you will misread Maya and think she's an accommodator. And accommodators are occasionally pushovers. And Maya is no pushover. She's no pushover at all. She's one of the toughest negotiators we have, but she's a thinker and she's very pleasant.
This made me laugh because, I was working a lot. I had partnered with this international sales guy. He's a really amazing salesman, top in terms of negotiating. And so we decided to work together. And he said to me, he said exactly the same thing. He said that
A lot of people, if I walk into a room, will misread me because I seem so friendly, and then suddenly it's like I switch in the meeting and I don't know when it's happening. It's just like my mind just switches off and I just go into a different zone and it takes them completely off guard. So this is really interesting. And so it really is about having that awareness so that you're not boxing people in, but just really being sharp enough to go deep enough to see past whatever is in front of you in the moment, so that you're not thinking someone's a certain archetype and then coming off in the wrong way or underestimating them.
And also, any of these types, as long as they're the beginning of your thinking and not the end of it. And the critical point that you made just now is don't box people in with these ideas. Use them as food for thought.
Yeah. And I see business people do that all the time, not just with negotiation, but with marketing techniques, with sales techniques, with everything. It's like they learn a certain technique or approach and they start to use it on everybody. And it just doesn't work because everyone's different.
Right. Yeah. If it works once, you want to stick with it.
Exactly.
And you stop adapting.
Exactly. And so, Chris, you have shared such amazing pearls of wisdom here today. But what I want to ask you is, what are the final thoughts that you want to leave with us in terms of, really stepping up the game and becoming a world-class negotiator?
Well, the secret to it is really becoming just more emotionally intelligent. We're seeing on a regular basis that this type of negotiation, women pick up faster than men.
I was going to ask this question. Are women better negotiators than men because of that empathy piece?
Women seem to be better at emotionally intelligent negotiation. And emotionally intelligent negotiation happens to also be the most effective kind of negotiation. So it kind of follows that women have the seeds and have the ability to become much better than men do, until men sort of wise up and begin to appreciate the need for emotional intelligence.
Amazing. So ladies, you hear this, all of you who are out there saying that you're not good at sales, it's in us. So as Chris said, just leverage it because it's something that comes natural to us apparently.
Yeah, one way or the other. I don't know if it's nature or nurture, but we're seeing an awful lot of reason why we firmly believe that women are better at this than men are.
Know that you are extremely busy working on high-level projects, everywhere. And we tried this before and it just wasn't the right timing. And I'm so grateful that, we've had this time to meet and to just learn so much more about your work. Just tell some of our listeners, where can they get more information about you, your company, and also your book?
All right, wonderful. So our website is blackswanltd.com. BlackSwanLTD.com.
Yeah.
Go to our website. We have a blog we put out a newsletter that comes out once a week. It's called The Edge. It's very concise. A lot of people that have read the book love The Edge as a supplement in order to keep your skills sharp, and you get a little tiny solid dose of negotiation advice every Tuesday morning, and it's free.
Great.
So go to the website, find the blog, The Edge. All the back articles are in there. You can do a search for any topic you want and subscribe to The Edge. And and it's free, so let us help you stay on top of your game. Buy the book, buy it on Amazon. It's the best price you're going to get. And then subscribe to The Edge and let us help you get better.
Thank you so much, Chris. This has been a wonderful interview, and I so appreciate you being so generous with your time with me.
It's my pleasure. It's my honor to be on with you. Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed this interview. I invite you to please subscribe to this channel and also visit our website at www.culturedlife.org.